Hi everyone, welcome to this session sponsored by TensorFlow User Group Mysuru and GDG Mysuru. I thank the organizers and volunteers for this event, and I thank Usha Rangaraju for inviting me for this talk. The talk for today is Opportunities and Challenges in Healthcare AI. About myself, I'm Anand Mahalingam. I work for HDFC Life, Bangalore, as a Vice President, Data Labs. Data Labs is the AI wing for HDFC Life. The agenda for today is, we'll talk about introduction to AI, the need for AI in healthcare. Also, we'll see the growth drivers for AI in healthcare. Then we jump into the opportunities in healthcare AI. Also, we'll look at the challenges. And finally, we can see the roadmap for healthcare AI. Before getting deeper into the subject, let us define what is artificial intelligence. AI is the ability of machines to use algorithms to learn from data and use what has been learned to make decisions like human would. We also see the definitions for machine learning and deep learning. This would help the non-technical people, because we might have the participants from the medical background and other domain who would be interested in healthcare AI. So we have seen what is artificial intelligence. What is machine learning? Machines have the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed. That's machine learning. And deep learning is a subset of machine learning that has networks which are capable of learning unsupervised from data that is unstructured or unlabeled. These are types of machine learning. It can be classified into supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement machine learning. Supervised machine learnings are mostly task-driven. It will help us to do regression or classification-related problems. Unsupervised are data-driven, clustering mechanism. Reinforcement algorithm learns to react to an environment. Artificial intelligence is changing many industries. So it is not only healthcare. So artificial intelligence is helpful in finance domain, travel domain, transportation, retail, journalism, education, agriculture, entertainment, and government. The next to healthcare, finance and agriculture plays a very important role in the industry segment. Look at the agriculture, starting from the disease detection by looking at the leaf of the plant. We can do many more things in agriculture. Getting the sensor data from the IoT devices, we can do a precision agriculture, which will save cost and will help us in getting more efficiency in the field. In the entertainment industry, I can say it is ruled by the machine learning algorithms. Look at the Netflix and Amazon Prime. Even how to attract people based on the trial movies. For example, if you are a thriller lover of thriller movies, it will customize the thumbnail generated for you, emphasizing on the thrilling scenes from that movie. If somebody likes more romantic movies, it will look at the scenes from that movie, and it will give you the relevant thumbnail from that particular movie. So that is happening automatically in the background. It is more of a personalization, and personalization with the help of deep learning, understanding the context from the images and videos, and it gives you the thumbnail. So we can talk about many things in different industries. Let us get into the AI in healthcare. Before that, our Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, he said like, AI is probably the most important thing humanity has ever worked on. AI is more profound than electricity or fire. That's true. We'll see now the artificial intelligence in healthcare. So this is the context, right? 30% of the entire world's data volume is generated in the healthcare industry. In an average, 80 megabits of imaging and electronic health record is generated for a single patient. So that we can understand the relevance of AI in healthcare. So every patient, if they are generating such a volume, and total data volume of the world, 30% is coming from the healthcare. You have a huge data in front of you to manage, to analyze, and to get insight from that. So definitely you need a new way of managing the system to handle such huge volume of data. The body as a source of a big data. If you look at X-ray, it is a 30 MB. And if you look at a genomic sequence of a human, it is the data is about 3 GB of data. Similarly, we have a lot of information on this infographics, talks about how as a human body is a source of big data and daily how much volume of data is getting generated. And again, we can see some context why nowadays the more focus on AI-based healthcare, and we need to look back the recent advancement in the technology. So the Moore's law says that the processing power doubles up every 18 months. And the Kreider's law says that the storage capacity doubles every 13 months. That way, now the computing power what we have and the storage capacity what we have, we were able to work on AI ML solutions more easily than a decade back. Earlier, it was done by only the big corporations and R&D units. They are getting into the AI research and trying to do pilot. But with the advancement of technology and the availability of the technical processor, processing power, storage capacity, also I should add the communication bandwidth. Now you have enough communication bandwidth available so that you can contact people, get data from different parts of the world. So all these things have helped in everybody getting into the artificial intelligence related research, particularly in healthcare. So these are all the things helping us. Again, in a deep neural network, recent advancements in I can say around 5 to 6 years. A simple example like the ReLU in place of TANH or sigmoid function, activation function. That is created a tremendous improvement in the algorithmic side. The ResNet in the image object detections and segmentation problems, it is helping a lot. So similarly in the transformers, it is helping a lot in natural language processing. If before we understand more on the need for AI in healthcare, we can see the problems in hand. Currently, we are at a 7.7 billion, and soon we will become 8.5 billion. And once we become 8.5 billion, if you look at the demographic data, the people aged 65 and above will be greater than aged 5 years and below. That means the geriatric population is going high. And finally, aged 65 and above will consist of 1.5 billion people. That means we need to have a lot of care system to be made ready for managing such a huge volume of patients who need care and support. Look at the top causes of death. It is nothing but smoking, obesity, hypertension, poor diet, lack of physical activity. All the items mentioned here are mostly on the behavioral side, the lifestyle. So how do we manage? How do we control? How do we educate people on continuous basis? Can we appoint a person for coaching everybody? Is it possible? Not possible. So we are looking for a technology like machine learning and deep learning assisted devices, so that the Fitbit kind of devices, which will continuously monitor your health data, and it will remind you about the various vitals, body vitals. So that way, we got a huge opportunity to bring in behavioral change of people in to avoid, to come out from these problems: lack of physical activity, smoking, obesity, and many more. And the COVID-19, we have seen it the worst. In the last 1.5 to 2 years, we are facing this issue, and we have overcome as well. But this has reminded us in terms of our preparedness for this similar pandemic. How do we need to manage hundreds and thousands of patients at the same time when the resources are at scale? So definitely we need a technology, and definitely that's where we are looking for an AI ML based solutions. Again, the specific growth drivers for AI in healthcare domain. What are those? Increasing individual healthcare expenses. For a person to visit a clinic or a hospital and undergoing any clinical assistance, the expenses are going very, very high. So the way the person he was spending 10 years back, it is totally changed. It is increased in manifold. Second one is imbalance between health workforce and the patient. So as per the World Health Organization standards, it is 2.5 doctors per 1,000 population. But most of the countries, it is less than 1 by 1,000. So there is the disparity. And increasing global healthcare expenditure. It is not only at the individual level, at the institution level, at the government level, it is increasing. Again, it is a continuous shortages of nursing and then other technical staff. It's not only the doctors. To run a efficient healthcare ecosystem, you need to have all kind of people, right? We need to have doctors, we need to have nurses and technical staff. So the number of vacancies for nurses will be 1.2 million by 2020. That is a huge in number. So AI is and will help medical practitioners efficiently achieve their task with minimal human intervention. It will help the medical practitioners in making quick decisions so that they can meet many patients in a short span of time. These are all the statistics about how different countries spend the money for healthcare, the percentage of GDP. If you look at the United States of America, it is spending 17.2% from the overall GDP for healthcare alone. And UK is 9.7, Australia, Canada, Germany is spending around 11.3%. Look at the challenges for Germany. It's an aging population, chronic ailments, wait times. How we are going to, as a nation, how we are going to manage all these things. That's where people are looking at opportunity areas for AI, how we can bring in patient safety, diagnostic solutions, so that things happen very quickly and doctors are able to take decisions for the patients. These are all the applications we can say AI in healthcare domain and a high level. It helps the areas where the work is done in a repetitive way. It helps, it empowers doctors to deliver faster and more accurate decisions. Actually, it is augmenting the professionals, offering them expertise and assistance. The idea is not to replace the doctors. AI can never replace doctors and healthcare professionals, but only will assist them in quick decision making with higher accuracy and efficiency. How it is doing, we are going to see that in the coming slides. Dr. Fifi Lee, one of the pioneers in healthcare AI, she always used to say, the verb we use in healthcare AI is augment, not automate. We are not trying to automate. We are trying to augment the capabilities of the healthcare worker by supporting with all AI, ML, and DL solutions. Again, another list of benefits of AI in healthcare domain. It definitely helps in clinical decision making or better clinical decisions. Look at compare experience versus fresh clinician. You deploy a system which it was trained by 20 years of patient data, and it has been given to the fresh clinician. A decision need to be made. So let us say a 2 to 3 years experienced clinician can have the support of 20 years history of different patients of that particular region so quickly with the supporting devices. That is possible only with this kind of AI solutions. Also, this kind of solutions work for 24/7 availability of expert. If you deploy such a system, it works for 24/7. It helps for all 3 shifts of doctors in a busy hospital. And it helps early diagnosis, it provides prediction analysis for the diseases as well as for the treatment, how the treatment need to be planned, everything we can. And it mainly reduces diagnostic and therapeutic errors. If you look at the major causes of error, apart from smoking and the obesity, the medical error stands at second as per the US data. So there's so much of life is lost due to the medical errors. So when you have a carefully planned AI system, AI-assisted system deployed, we can avoid a lot of these diagnostics and therapeutic errors. Also, it increases the patient safety, and obviously we get the cost savings. It can learn from the existing patient data. It can bring in real-time inferences. Also, it has the capacity to learn and self-correct based on the feedback on the go. Other areas where we can work, the healthcare AI, genomic, behavioral, and symptoms, family history. It can get all the data and it can bring in more valuable decision-making capability for doctors. We have other benefits mentioned: prediction and prevention, medication safety and reconciliation, precision medicine, and drug discovery. If you, in a broader overview, if you look at the application of healthcare AI, it is in the diagnosis area, in the treatment area, and analytics. Analytics, we can say from the electronic health records, electronic medical records. In a HIS, in a hospital information system, we will be collecting loads and loads of data about the patient, the treatment methodologies, everything. So you can apply analytics there and then get information. CDSS, clinical decision support system, for doctors to take a right call for the treatment of the patient. Devices, how we can, AI-assisted devices can be implemented in the patient workflow. Drug development, we are going to see, and care and surgery. These are all, we have seen the robotic surgery. So these are all the major areas where the AI can be applied. First, we'll get into the AI in radiology. Radiology is an interesting field. So it is having a huge history where it's a very important piece of diagnosis at the early stage of diagnosis for a patient. What are the benefits of bringing AI in radiology? It not only gives you a clear, accurate results, it improves the overall imaging value chain. And it can bring in accuracy and consistency in reports, reducing imaging error. It is optimizing throughputs, improving quality and efficiency, positioning and reconstruction. So it is improving the value of clinical intelligence and improving the knowledge quotient. A simple example, how a lung cancer detection using chest radiography. So the deep learning based application help professionals to identify tiny and hidden nodules from a chest radiographs. It helps physicians make an early diagnosis in a lung cancer in the chest radiographs. Even a non-expert, non-specialist can perform at a specialist level in detecting lung nodules in chest radiographs. How it works in a very simple term, it location information of detected lesions in the form of heat maps. It produces the heat maps like this in the right hand side of the diagram from the actual chest radiograph. It produces the heat maps and the area where the abnormal things are coming up, that has been given in a different color. Abnormality scores reflecting the probability that the detected lesion is abnormal. So that way we can see that it's abnormal lesions. Earlier, look at the brain MRI images. Radiologists used to decide and deliver the summary report based on qualitative and subjective way. By introducing AI in radiology, we are able to quantify that. And again, once you are able to we are able to make the algorithm clear for a complex scenario, effortlessly it can be reproduced. The second time, it is not like the hard way. It will be an effortless way. We were able to find the similar instances. See some of the examples. Here, a nodule diagnosed as a lung cancer hidden behind the heart is properly detected with the abnormality score of 44%. This case was missed by 8 out of 15 radiologists. Normally, when we deploy an application, radiology, AI-based radiology application, how do we determine the success, or how do we determine that how efficiently it works? The same X-ray is given to the radiologist and the same X-ray is fed into the AI system. So this particular case was missed by 8 out of 15 radiologists, but wherein the AI system was able to find all the cases. Similarly, this is another area where it was abnormality score was 66%. It was missed by 9 out of 9 radiologists. Everybody, all the radiologists, they couldn't find this, but the AI system with a properly trained algorithm is able to do this. And this is again abnormality score of 96% and missed by 5 out of 9 radiologists. It is hidden behind the diaphragm. So normally such things will be missed out, even for the human eye. But when we have a complex cases like this, when we are able to add this kind of complexity and able to add this kind of peculiar cases during the training, definitely this AI system is going to predict into the real time. Pancreas is one of the complex areas in the human body. There will be a lot of overlaps within nearby elements. So normally the unit-based algorithm is specially designed for biomedical images. So in this particular study, the researchers have done some more advancement on over and above the unit algorithm, and they were able to see a minor changes in the pancreas very, very accurately, and it is saving hundreds and thousands of people life on daily basis. Dr. Geeta Manjunath from Karnataka, Bangalore, she's running a company, Niramai. They are doing a breast cancer diagnosis in a new methodology to using the thermal cameras. They get the images, and then from that, using the deep learning techniques, they detect the breast cancer at the early stages itself. And it works well for all the age groups. We'll talk about AI in drug discovery. So AI in drug discovery in different areas. If you look at this particular graph, oncology and neurology and infectious diseases, these are all the areas where people are doing hundreds of studies and implementation, early implementation. That shows AI is becoming a part of drug discovery in all the areas, particularly in oncology, neurology, because these are all the medical domains we are finding still we are facing challenges. We are not able to overcome these diseases, cancer, neurology, Alzheimer, Parkinson disease, so many other areas. So these are all the areas. And why, again, drug development, why we need to introduce AI? So increased trial complexity, larger clinical trial sizes, higher cost of inputs, changes in protocol design, testing on comparator drugs. These are all the areas it is very cumbersome processes, and a lot of data need to be managed, analyzed. That's where we are talking about bringing in AI-based solutions to reduce the cost. See, if you look at the, before we need to understand the drug development, we need to understand how is our human biology. There are more than 40 trillion cells in the human body, and more than 1 million molecules in each of those cells. The complexity, if you look at multiplying all these things, it is staggering. So how can we use digital transformation and artificial intelligence to reduce the cost, timeline, and to increase the efficiency in drug development? It is, if you look at the data, it is astonishingly complex. Even after sequencing the entire human genome, we are able to do that now, right? But still, we only understand a small fraction of human biology. In a way, it is a miracle we find a medicine at all. Basically, it is a miracle. But on the positive side, we are on the era where data science and digital are making its strides. We can dramatically improve our ability to diagnose and discover new medicines and treatment. The drug works in a principle that will the given molecule stick to the given protein? In a human body, there are proteins, bacteria, virus, pathogens, and cancer cells. For example, a protein causes inflammation. Then you find a molecule, aspirin, it's a tablet. They just happen to be at the right size and shape, and it sticks to the inflammatory protein. By sticking to it, it inhibits the activity, and all of a sudden the activity of the protein decreases and you treat the disease. This is how antibiotics works, antiviral and cancer medication works. So that is explained here. So this is the key and lock image in the left hand side. This is the protein image on the right hand side. So there can be millions and billions of keys with a lot of variations can be made, but it can open only one or few more locks. And it cannot open any other lock. Similarly, in the drug discovery, the idea is to find the right key, that is the drug, that fits the lock, that is the disease or protein. Each lock is a protein that corresponds to a disease. So lock here is the protein and disease, and then key is the drug. So artificial intelligence, in particularly deep learning, is made a lot of progress in object detections. We know that you can find out the it works great in object detections, face recognition, autonomous cars. We have seen a number of use cases. Now it is going to create a big impact on drug discovery as well. So that's where the use case of AI in drug discovery. Earlier it was done in a manual way. People try to see for one model, one protein, and look at that, how does it work, and then move to the next. Now with the usage of the protein binding, we can it helps, it speeds up the drug developmental activity. Mainly it works in the CNN. Why we are going for a CNN is like the initial layers, generic knowledge layers, it helps us in finding the feature extractor as a feature extractor, and at the edge there are fully connected layers. It, its role is as a classifier. It works as a classifier. So this phenomena, it is exactly helped in the drug discovery. We know in a typical classification task, we understand whether it is a dog or a cat. So based on the features of a dog and cat, we try to understand, we design the deep learning algorithms. The fully connected layers convert these features into probabilities. So here we are using a CNN to classify an image and determine whether it is a cat or a dog. This kind of CNN would be composed of several layers connected one after another. These layers represent mathematical operations. The output of one layer is input to the next. The first layer is the input layer where the input image is fed. The last layer is the output layer, which gives the predictions. So with the given features, nose, eyes, color, body shape, the deep learning detects it is a cat or dog. In a similar form, we can look at molecule in a binding pocket on a protein and say, is this a binder or a non-binder? That's what we need to, we are interested in a drug development. Is it a binder or non-binder? How do we look at that? How we are extracting the features from the images like dog or cat? The similar technique is applied here, and then we check, is it a binder or non-binder? It is a detailed process development. AI is helping in each and every area. Clinical research, preclinical research, drug safety and monitoring, pharmacovigilance, everywhere it is helping. Now we can get into AI in ophthalmology. How using a retinal image, eyes retinal image, we can understand, we can derive various body vitals and diagnosis of various different diseases. So here you take a retinal image using a portable camera. So the AI engine analyzes the particular retina image. You are able to get the report within a minute. What we are getting with the retinal images itself, we are able to predict the age of the person, gender of the person. Look at these images. Its actual age is like more of 57. The actual predicted is 59, almost near. Gender it predicts accurately. And is it a person is smoking, non-smoker or smoker? And is it diabetic, non-diabetic? What is the BMI value of the person? It almost gives the accurate values by just looking at the retina images. How it is possible? By training hundreds and thousands of retina images. Look at the numbers, number of patients, data is fed into the algorithm and trained. Apart from this smoker, non-smoker, it gives the blood pressure value, systolic blood pressure and diastolic blood pressure. It is almost near values. Non-invasive method in getting the body vitals. It will be helpful in various scenarios. Let us say we need to cover a large population with a minimal medical staff. You will not have time and equipments to manage all the things. Similarly, in healthcare, in insurance domains, this information of the customers will be very helpful in deciding their policy terms. So these studies are not in a pilot stage, they are in a practical stage. Look at the AUC values, it is 0.97. So it is becoming more of real-time applications in the healthcare. When in my previous experience, when I was working with my healthcare technologies, we have been looking for how do we diagnose and treat for Parkinson's disease. We have taken that as a research project, and we're developing a product to assist Parkinson disease patient. So Parkinson disease is a neurodegenerative disease. The person who got affected by Parkinson disease will have a difficulty in getting up, walking, and even the patient cannot express, the facial expression will become very rigid. They cannot express freely. So as per the Parkinson disease standards, the guidelines, there are certain test methodologies to see, to detect whether the person is having Parkinson disease or not. Also to see the intensity of the disease. So in part, among the multiple tests, important ones are gait analysis, bradykinesia, facial expression analysis, speech analysis, and tremor analysis. So in the gait analysis, what we're trying to do is, like, before we introduce this, the traditional method, if you look at, the patient will be asked to run in a treadmill, walk in a treadmill, to see how is their body coordinates moves as against the time scale. Already the patient is affected by the disease. They cannot walk freely, and putting them again into such hard test will make the situation worse, and the doctors are not getting the effective diagnosis. So we have introduced this gait analysis using the pose estimation, body pose estimation. So we ask the patient to walk for 25 feet forward and in return. So a caregiver or the healthcare assistant can take a video of a patient walking forward and backward. We apply the pose estimation on the patient. So when we apply the pose estimation, we get 18 coordinates in a body. So 0 represents the nose and 1 neck, and similarly right knee, right ankle, and right ear, left ear. Each and every body coordinates has been represented in a pose estimation. So we look at these details for every second. Let us say when we are recording a video in 30 frames per second, so we get 30 images in a second, and every scene, every image, what is the every second, how is the rate of change of body coordinates that we take, and we collect a lot of Parkinson disease patient, non-Parkinson disease patient, how do they walk. All this information has been converted, feature extracted, and trained by the deep learning models. We use a combination of CNN as well as LSTM, and then we build an algorithm which helps the patient and assist doctors in understanding the probabilistic score of the Parkinson disease by just taking in a video in a very simple manner. So the application works in this way. There is a central AI engine, there is a patient app, and there is a doctor app. The patient just need to submit the video and input data and the date time like that. And it goes to the AI engine, and the video is fed into the AI engine, and the analysis and report is given to the doctor. The doctor also can give a feedback to the patient, and it works in this way. Apart from the gait analysis, another important area is the bradykinesia. So how we are able to move the fingers like this, and the Parkinson patient, they move, there is a lot of difference. After a few clicks, they cannot move this freely. It will be difficult for them. So this is one of the important technique in understanding the disease severity in Parkinson disease. So we applied hand pose estimation in a deep learning computer vision based technique, where we understand each of every hand finger coordinates, and again all these features are extracted and fed into the deep learning algorithm, and then again we were able to predict accurately the person is having a Parkinson disease or not. To assist, always you need to provide a system in such a way that you are able to see some evidences for the result what we are getting. You can call it as an explainable AI as well. Here, we just feed the data in a graph. So this is the graph for a normal, and this is the graph for the abnormal. So though the AI system deep learning gives the probability scores, the doctors can look into the graph as well. From the physical, how we are, the video is, from the video, we are extracting the coordinates and then plotting the graphs. So on both ways, through the algorithm and through the human eye, you will understand the person, the pulse, the way the fingertip movement is very abnormal in this following graph. So you will be more confidently you can say that the person is having a Parkinson's disease. And facial expression analysis, again, the Parkinson patients, as I said, they will have a difficulty in expressing themselves. Their facial muscles becomes rigid. They cannot express freely. So there are different action units. When you look at the facial expression analysis and deep learning, the face is divided into multiple action units. So we try to pick up the different action units, how it is the rate of change on for every, we take the video of a patient, we apply the facial expression analysis, and we look into the different action units, and then pick up those features and then try to build a deep learning algorithm. Similarly, here, this is a model where we could pick up all the 72 facial points in a human face, and then from there we try to predict the Parkinson disease probability scores. We have seen Parkinson disease, we have seen radiology, we have seen AI in drug development. Also, we can, in public health, it is in a big area. Again, we need a lot of support. So how AI is helping in public health? So it helps in surveillance and protection. It helps for population risk management. It helps in intervention selection. It will also on intervention targeting. So population health is how we can, for the government and an institute, how the overall health can be managed. Better understanding of burden of disease, like particular polio, how it is getting affected in a particular state. What is the epidemiology data? Prediction of future disease spread, including the outbreaks. By continuously collecting data from the health workers, the frontline workers at the field, we can predict the disease spread, how it is going to outbreak in the coming days, in the coming month. All these things are possible. And in intervention selection, it's analyzes specific characteristics of populations in the geographic areas flagged as high risk and recommend specific population health interventions and likely to be most effective and efficient in the context. So you need to do it in a very country level, state level, and district level. So you need to have a system in built, and again, the data is important here. As much as data is collected and fed and maintained, you can better manage the healthcare, particularly in the public health. So this example is from the Melinda Gates and Rockefeller Foundation. They have done they have done a lot of healthcare AI implementations in the different parts of the country. As an example, we can see how in public health such innovative solutions are working. So in this example, in Kenya, in the country of Kenya, Anita, she lives in a rural village, and it is 6 hours from Nairobi. Nairobi, we all know, and 2 hours on dirt roads from the closest hospital. Look at the kind of conditions and their medical facilities availability and all. So when such public health systems are designed, so the community worker at the front line, they get empowered. Otherwise, they can just understand saying that so and so person is having a problem. But in this case, Anita became a community health worker. Now she goes to door in her community, helping local patients with health advice and selling basic health products to address their needs. How is it possible? She got a smartphone with various apps, let us say some 2 to 3 apps for different purposes. Take some body vitals, take some symptoms. We can have a chatbot. We can have a search engine to understand saying that let us feed the symptoms of a particular patient. And then it will give you a direction saying then what is the precaution need to be done, whether to visit a hospital or what is the first aid can be done. All this information can be fed. So this kind of interventions, this kind of smartphone based AI applications helps covering a area which otherwise is not at all possible. So this is one example. Similarly, this is in Jacinta, is a radiologist who works for public hospital in Ecuador. So here what happens is they got hundreds of they very again we talked about limited doctors availability. Here we have she's the one, she has to look hundreds of patient in screening breast cancer, but without any before implementing these AI solutions, the patient need to wait for weeks together to get the results. But when the hospital is supported with AI-enabled radiology, they were able to do the analysis in a day, because even with the less radiologist, when you deploy a AI-based radiology system, you are able to get the results very quickly. So the wait time reduces, and so that you don't miss out any patient who's having a breast cancer without for further follow. If it is taking days, 10 days, 15 days, it is so happened that the person stopped visiting the hospital, and they it becomes we are not able to diagnose those breast cancer patients. But with the introduction of AI-enabled radiology, you get your results very quickly. As we have seen in a radiology, it works accurately, consistently, and more efficiently. We have all seen so far the opportunities, how different domain it helps. Now we look at the challenges in healthcare AI. Is it straightforward? Is it like straightforward implementation of any AI solutions? No, we have challenges. Challenges in terms of data sharing and data governance, challenges in patient safety, approval, regulations, skilled resources, getting skilled resources in healthcare AI. And we also have technical and algorithmic issues. We'll see in detail. Challenges in data sharing and data governance. We are talking, so far we were talking about an AI, now we are talking about a data, because to have a successful AI algorithm, you need to have tons and tons of data. So data is not readily available, and it is not in a uniform way. It will be structured and unstructured, and it will be in a different systems. So this is one of the study found saying that 89% of the time goes on managing the data. Only 19% goes on analyzing the data. Among this 89, searching, preparing, and protecting, these are all the 20%, 37%, and 24% for this 89, under the 89%. So to make the data useful for analysis, you need to do a lot of work in preparing itself. There are two things we need to do to get the right data for any AI solutions, any machine learning or deep learning solutions. Data unification, because it will be in a different format. It will be collected from a third party. It will be from the web services. We will be collecting some data. We'll be collecting data from ERP, data warehouse, relational data, non-relational data. So we need to have a system which will unify all the data so that we can feed the data into any of the algorithmic applications, AI algorithm, and we get a useful insights. The second important area is data interoperability, because different systems will use a different standard form, different data formats, and different laboratories, application providers, pharmacies, and health and fitness device manufacturers. It is very difficult to bring all the people in a same umbrella. There are different hospitals, again, different regions, Europe, US, Asia, Australia. So people might follow a different style, legacy applications, modern applications. So to bring in, people should be able to exchange the data very efficiently, then only putting all the information, because in order to have a patient's 360-degree view, we need to collect all the data together, and then we need to start doing analysis. That's where the standards came in play. The HIPAA compliances, HL7 based standards, FIHR, and all these things becoming more standard nowadays, where every healthcare provider started following that, so that the information exchange happens so freely, and we were able to get a full view of the patient. And privacy, people are talking about privacy now when we introduce AI in healthcare. If you look at 1998, when the internet growth happened, people started saying that, no, I need a privacy layer, because now my information is available on internet and it can go, anything may happen. So initially it wasn't a big problem, and government started assessing the creating privacy law and regulations to guide and govern how do we consume the data, particularly in healthcare and internet. Now similar thing is happening again. So what happened afterwards? People started setting clear standards, and International Association of Privacy Professionals formed, and now it is 20K members in 83 countries. Why I'm quoting this is, now similarly in AI privacy also, when more and more people are participating, and it will be a mature, it is going to mature in the coming days. And if you look at US Food and Drug Administration, FDA, it accepts and encourages, saying that, no, the current approach to regulation of medical devices is not appropriate. It has released a white paper saying that, yes, it is not appropriate. We need to bring in a new method in terms of accessing these medical devices. So the change is happening everywhere. And these are all the standards. It helps in terms of managing your privacy. When designing in a healthcare AI system, if you follow the guidelines given by this different system, the personal health information should be treated very securely. GDPR in Europe, you need to follow the guidelines if you are designing a system. And you need to look at the HIPAA compliance, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. So what happens to, how do we bring in transparency, and how do we bring in explainable AI? The American College of Radiology, they have set up a center which is called ACR AI Lab. There different multiple radiologists across country can join, volunteer, and they can create an algorithm, they can annotate data, they can play with the AI systems, so that it becomes common across country, saying that how the radiology need to be looked in from the AI perspective. So this platform, like this kind of a platform, need to be developed for different regions and different countries, so that the people, the domain core people, the radiologist, if they understand well, and they know like how it can interpret, how I can make an analysis which can be sent to the different part of the world, and still people can interpret. So this kind of initiative is needed. We have seen the privacy and the process level problems in healthcare. This is more of a technical or algorithmic challenges. Always we know, right? Now when we define a when we design and train an algorithm, we need to have a data set. And class imbalance is one of the important area. It creates a problem in terms of bringing an accuracy. So class is like, what is the target variable? What is the data what we are looking for? In medical, it is always problematic because the abnormality data what you are collecting, it will be very, very less. Let us say 99% of the patients, it will be a normal. 1% of the patient, they will have this abnormality in these kind of MRI scans, chest X-rays, etc. So this is the big problem. How do we do that? So you need to work on different data augmentation techniques to overcome these problems. In an image on the left-hand side, it's in a street view where people are walking. If I need to do a object detection or segmentation, it is easier. We can see the human being, and then our algorithm can be easily trained, and then we can put our bounding boxes around the people walking. Look at the image at the right-hand side, the brain image. The yellow highlighted area, which is a small change in this particular MRI, where we need to put a bounding box, and then we need to see that is it a normal or abnormal. To explain the problem, look at this. If you see a classification of cats or dogs, images of cats, we are, let us say we have 1024 and 1024 in RGB value into 3. This is the kind of pixels we'll have for training. But look at the cat CT scan. It is 512 and 512 into 300. The depth. The input size is 30 times larger, but object size is 10 times smaller. Though you have the number of images is 30 times higher than the normal similar object detection, but the problem area where we are interested in, that is 10 times smaller. This makes the healthcare challenging, particularly in the radiology, to predict the lesions, the chest nodules, the abnormality in the brain hemorrhage, and many more areas. But we have mechanisms to overcome that. As explained, this is putting a bounding box on the person doing cycling is very easy. This is the brain hemorrhage photo where a small particle you need to identify. It is highly deformable and less rigid. Also, when a radiology is looking at the patient data, he not only looked at particular chest X-ray, he looks at the demography, where the patient is from, what is the referral letter which doctor has referred to us, past scans report, because normally patient will go with all the past scan report and everything when they are visiting a specialist, and scanner metadata, from which scan center they have taken this particular scan. And then by putting all together, we try to do the diagnosis. When we're trying to put an AI-based radiology system, you do not have all the information, or you still you only look at the images. These data, demographics, referral letters, past scan, and report, it will be in a different format. Something will be digital, something will be still in a paper-based. So it is an unstructured data. That is a challenge again. So as a radiology, how they are looking at the X-ray and other details, when you are implementing a system, you're finding a difficulty in clubbing all this data. So these are all the challenges, but we have the mechanism to overcome in carefully. Now, for example, in this area, we can have all the data, unstructured data, with the usage of natural language processing. We can do OCR, and then we can convert all the data into a text, and then we can feed into that. If you design in such a way that it takes the information from the additional data, the patient related information, plus the X-ray, and then combine, it gives you an output. These are all the checklist people have come out when you need to when we talk about the ethical privacy, ethical AI. If we are able to follow the checklist while designing the algorithm, our AI system will do wonderfully. It will work as equal to the human being. Let us say the sources of data, what is the participants, outcome, how it has to be, what is the predictors, sample size, missing data. Explain these things in a clearly when you are releasing an AI-based healthcare algorithm. When you do that, it helps everybody to follow and understand saying then on what basis this particular algorithm works. So this is called a tripod checklist, famous in the healthcare world. The other challenges, we have seen the technical challenges. The other challenges are ethical and privacy issues, fairness, reliability, privacy and security, inclusiveness, transparency and accountability, how it is going to help. So AI system, if you look at the fairness, what is fairness? AI system should treat everyone in a fair and balanced manner, not affect similarly situated groups of people in a different ways. Non-representative collection of data also can produce biases. For example, reliance on data collected through user-facing apps. Let us say that we collect the BP values, BMI values from the wearables, and we try to build a application which detects. If you look at who can, it will be skewed towards the socio-economically advantageous population. What happens, what is the data from the people who are not wearing such a Fitbit or the wearables? How about their representation? So that becomes a problem. So when you are designing a system, it has to represent all the population. The reliability, it has to work in a reliable way. For example, AI system designed for vision component assess skin lesions for cancer. It may have difficulty in consistently spotting patterns on the different race and skin coloration. If you are designed the system with one particular ethnicity, one race, when we have a different race and skin coloration, it might work in a different way. It may not give accurate results. So such systems need to be carefully designed. So they have to conduct tests across all skin types. For example, in a chest X-ray by Icahn School of Medicine in Mount Sinai, pneumonia detection, they found a significant performance issue when tested on outside health system because it was looking for the X-rays taken in the same hospital. When the different X-ray in the kind of standards it was getting, it was failing or it was giving less accurate results. So when developing AI system, we need to look carefully on the reliability issues. We need to get the representation from all the populations. So if you look at AI, it is not only the technology, right? It is about the people, it is about the process, culture, and strategy. And ultimately, it is redefining the relationship between a human and machine. So in order to improve things, it is not only the technology wise, you need to have strong processes. People should understand the value of it. And we need to have a right strategy in terms of delivering such applications in the field. So this gives you the roadmap for deploying effective ML system in healthcare. Number one, choosing the right problems. This problem, is it a clinically relevance? Do we have appropriate data? Where we are going to collaborate? Who are all the hospitals ready to do the pilot? And what is the definition of success? What is the accuracy levels we are looking at? How people will say that, yes, the system is doing well. We have seen the example of radiologist. The same system, same X-ray is given to the radiologist and then compared with the machine. We have seen that how many radiologists could find the same problem. So likewise, we need to define the success and developing a useful solution. What is the data provenance? How we are defining the ground truth, ethical implications. ethics engagement, and bias correction. We need to bring in some outsiders to see that like, uh, uh, are we doing it right? There should be always a third party to look at, is this points have been taken very seriously, and rigorous evaluation and thoughtful reporting. Once you successful in and delivering, predicting certain diseases, sometimes we will be more enthusiastic and we'll say that yes, it works fantastic, and we start telling the whole world. But before doing that, we need to see that what is the model use. Are we going to if the code is open so that people can look into it and do corrections if any, and what are the failure modes, how we are going to see that no, if it is not able to detect that particular disease, what is the error messages in the APIs we are going to give to the people, and it has to be deployed responsibly. What is the performance, prospective performance, clinical trial, how many months and weeks we have done the clinical trial in a shadow mode. For example, when you deploy an application, it cannot go in a full live mode. You have to have a normal system, maybe a human in the loop, and then we have a AI system works in a shadow mode. So we can keep comparing the result. What is the prediction by the doctors and the clinicians and the radiologists? Note down that and compare the results from the AI system. Compare these two values and then see that like how, what is the successful apart from the accuracy, precision, F1 scores. These things are important in terms of in the field level. And safety monitoring, how continuously once in 3 months or 6 months we are going to revisit and say that like how it is performing, and making it to market. And finally, when it is pushing to the market as a commercial solutions, the devices, is it attached to a device or it is going to work as a standalone system? Model updates. Okay, you have designed a system based on the initial data collection, but over the period of time you are collecting, sometimes you are collecting, maybe you can use a federated learning where you continuously collect data from different hospitals and then you train the model independently and you have the improvement in the model. But how are you going to update the model into the system? All these things need to be discussed and planned as a roadmap whenever we plan to deploy a ML system, particularly for the healthcare system. So in a nutshell, the combination of human plus AI is our only option to bring the benefits of AI to the real world. It is not only by just putting the AI, it has to be the human in a loop, human plus AI, that becomes very powerful. With that, I'll end my talk and thank you so much for attending this session. So we do not have the time for QA session. So feel free to reach out to me on my email, on LinkedIn or on Twitter. So we can be in touch and then we can discuss more about healthcare and AI. Thank you. Thank you so much.